everybody? Manny back here once again. Welcome to DFS Zone. Today I'm going to discuss with you what are the best possible plays for us week 4 of the NFL for the quarterback position. But before I get started with the video, I appreciate you guys drop a like on the video. And if you're looking for information in the NFL throughout the whole NFL season, if you're new to DFS, especially DFS NFL, I'm going to be cranking out 4 or 5 videos a week. On top of that, we will also have a live show, which we've already conducted for 3 weeks. That's on Saturday nights at 7 p.m. So make sure you do subscribe to the channel and put on your post notifications. This way you do not miss any of those uploads as well as any of those live shows. We also are going to be taking care of the NBA season. I just finished doing WNBA, went right into the NFL, and then pretty much in about 3.5 weeks or so, we'll be already discussing the NBA season, and we will have a video for you guys every single day for that as well. So I would definitely suggest subscribe down below. Make sure you put on those post notifications and be a part of the DFS Zone community so that you'll be able to get that great information as much as possible every single day. All right, with all that out of the way, quarterbacks. Before I get started with the quarterbacks, I definitely want to be able to share with you, just to keep myself accountable, of the actual plays I gave you last week. So last week I gave you 3 quarterbacks. I also suggested last week that I was in favor of paying up for a quarterback. I actually paid up for quarterbacks last week, and obviously Patrick Mahomes was one of my quarterbacks that I suggested to you guys. He had a fairly decent game. I mean, we don't expect Patrick Mahomes to go out there and put up 40 fantasy points every single week and throw 4 or 5 touchdowns, but he still was not too bad at all, as he finished with 25.26 FanDuel points and 28.26 DK points. So a pretty good week, not too bad. Would have loved to see 30 plus, but we'll accept that at 8,900 here on FanDuel. He was 7K on DK, which is not too bad. A better play out of the other ones that I recommended you guys Deshaun Watson, and Deshaun Watson actually, as far as price concerned, he was the better play last week. Deshaun Watson, very, very good game. 26 FanDuel points, 29 DK points, slightly a little higher than Mahomes, but he was actually cheaper. He was actually $1,200 cheaper on FanDuel. He was $7,700, and he was $6,100 on DK, which is $900 cheaper than Mahomes on DK, and he put up some really good numbers. So good job, Deshaun Watson. Unfortunately, it did not get a win. And then my value play, I gave you a value play at quarterback. I thought it would probably be a little sneaky play. I didn't play him in the main tournaments. I did play him only in the 4 o'clock slate, and that was Mitch Trubisky. And Trubisky did not play well at all. Only 6.6 FanDuel points and 7.8 DK points. Obviously a downer. That's definitely a complete bust. It's going to happen. Again, this is why I want to be able to share with you that there are great opportunities and they're going to be great plays. But I am human, just like a lot of other individuals out here on the internet giving advice to people. Sometimes we're going to be wrong, you know, and sometimes the bottom line is that we also have to take into account that this is professional sports any given Sunday. And I say that all the time on my live shows as well as some of these videos, is that I want everybody to remember that anything can happen in an NFL game as well as in a Major League Baseball game, NBA game, in a boxing match, in an MMA match, anything, any team sport as well as individual sport. If you've been a fan as long as I've been, nearly over 40 years, I've been watching sports pretty much over 40 years, because I'm 50 years old. I'm in my 50s already. The bottom line is that I've seen a lot of sports. I've seen it all happen. So trust me, guys, if you have not been involved or watched sports that long, watch them long enough and you'll see that a lot of things can happen. Granted, this past weekend we had 4 upsets this weekend. It was, you know, really a horrible weekend as far as fantasy points concerned, because we were all geared up on some of these games that really were in favorable positions, and we had Minnesota lose really big to Buffalo. Anyway, that's for another discussion. Just wanted you guys to be aware of that. So those are the 3 plays I gave you last week. 2 of them turned out to be really good. One turned out to be a good price value in Deshaun Watson. Now it's time to just get into the nitty gritty and let's discuss what I think are some of the best plays for us this week. Obviously, we look at the slate. I mean, Drew Brees has been fantastic. He's definitely in play, guys. When he's not in play, I mean, he's going up against the Giants. The Giants' defense is not too bad. I am not actually on him. I'm not going to discuss a whole lot about Drew, but I think he is definitely someone you can consider at that 8,700 price. And he is, what, 760-something? He is 6,600 on DK, so not too bad there as far as the price. I'm not on Brady. I'm not on Rodgers, due to the fact Brady, obviously, he doesn't have the weapons that he needs on that offense right now. Right now, that offense has not come together. So I am definitely not on Tom Brady. I haven't been on him all year as of yet. Aaron Rodgers is someone I do like. This is obviously a favorable matchup for him going up against Buffalo. But the problem is I don't think Aaron Rodgers is 100%. Excuse me, 100% as far as his health is concerned. So that is a concern for me. And for that, $8,500, I'd rather pay up $200 more for Drew Brees if I were you. So, but Aaron Rodgers can be possibly a play. The first guy I am going to discuss that I do like is Matt Ryan. His price has come up. He's at $8,100 on DK. On FanDuel, and he is $6,100 on DK, $2,000 cheaper. He's right here, $2,000 cheaper. I mean, that is not too bad. Okay. He's averaging 28.2 DK points and 27.2 FanDuel points. His last 2 games were pretty nice. He had 26 of 35 in the last game, 375 yards, 5 touchdowns, as you can see here. 4 rushing attempts with 12 yards, 40.16 FanDuel fantasy points. The game prior to that, 23 of 28, 272, 2-1-4, and 18-2, 31.6 fantasy points against Carolina. As you can see, he went from that 9 dismal in game 1, and he has improved that big time. He's up to 27 fantasy points. I love that. He's also going in his 3rd straight game at home. Granted, he lost last week. He did play well, as you can see in the numbers, 374. But at home, he's been excellent. 78% completion percentage at home. He's averaging 323 yards. So I definitely like those numbers going up against the opponent that they're going up with Cincinnati. In the red zone, he's been spectacular. 11 of 19, 52%, 93 yards passing, 6 touchdowns. 6 touchdowns inside the 20. Inside the 10, 4 TDs, 30 yards, 5 of 12. So he's doing fairly well. He's going up against Cincinnati. Cincinnati's 24th in pass defense this year after 3 weeks, giving up 270 yards per game. And the opposition, the quarterbacks, are averaging 65% completion percentage on them with 8 touchdowns. And that falls right into in the right direction with Matt Ryan. With them giving up 270 yards per game and Matt Ryan averaging 323 at the moment, I think this is going to be a tough matchup for Cincinnati in Atlanta. In the red zone, the opponents have been averaging 3 opportunities in the red zone on Cincinnati, and they're scoring 2 touchdowns every time. 77% conversion ratio in the red zone. They have been coughing up 25.8 FanDuel DK points to quarterbacks throughout the course of the season, and 23.5 FanDuel points, and we got somebody who's averaging 28 and 27. Those numbers definitely look pretty darn good for Mr. Matt Ryan. Another thing that I also like out of this is that Atlanta has been averaging 4.5 opportunities in the red zone, and they've been scoring at a 69% clip, putting up 3 touchdowns every time they've gone to the red zone. And like I said already, the red zone has been a really bad spot for Cincinnati, as they've been coughing up 77% to their opponents. So I can see Mr. Matt Ryan throwing possibly another 2 or 3 touchdowns this week. He's been averaging pretty much 2 in the 3 games. Let's just double check that. Well, he's averaged 2, pretty much 3, 7 in the last 2 games. All right, so these numbers look really good. So I like Mr. Matt Ryan there. My next guy I'm going to discuss that I think is a fine place right below him, $300 cheaper, Phillip Rivers. Granted, this game they are 10-point favorites, the Chargers. And obviously the only thing we can hope for here is San Francisco finds a way to keep the games fairly close so Mr. Phillip Rivers and company can still keep airing the ball so we can gain those fantasy points. But Phillip Rivers here is definitely in a favorable spot. I haven't been on Phillip Rivers this season as of yet. He is here at 7,800 on FanDuel and 6,500 on DK. Where's Mr. Rivers? Right here. 6,500 on DK. Last week, very poor game for them. Poor game for him. 18 out of 30. 226 yards, 2 touchdowns. 17 fantasy points. In the game prior to that against Buffalo, 23 of 27, 256 and 3, with 3 rushes for 5 yards, 22.7 fantasy points. He's averaging 23 fantasy points. All right. And I like the fact that in the 2 weeks he has thrown, pretty much in all 3 weeks, he has thrown at least 2 touchdowns. Okay. And his interception has been down. He has only thrown 1 interception out of 8 touchdowns. That is not too bad at all. So he's definitely throwing the ball fairly well. He didn't throw well this past week. Again, granted, he played against the Rams. They're one of the better defense teams, all-around defensive teams in the league. Prior to that, he did play against two teams that were very, very poor as far as pass defense, Kansas City and Buffalo, and that's why he put those numbers up. And he's going up against a team this week in San Francisco, which, you know, they had their issues as well. But in the red zone, Phillip Rivers has been pretty good. He's had 12 of 16 passing, 75% completion percentage with 120 yards and 7 touchdowns. Zippo, no interceptions, okay? Inside the 10, 6 of 9, 42 yards, 4 touchdowns. Obviously, as he's gotten closer, he has gotten 4 TDs there out of the 7 have come inside the 10. He's going against San Francisco. Like I mentioned, San Fran is 27th in the league in pass defense after 3 weeks. The quarterbacks are completing 61, almost 62% completion percentage against them. And they're giving up 288 yards per game and 8 touchdowns thus far to quarterbacks this year. Last week, they gave up 314 yards, 3 touchdowns to Mr. Patrick Mahomes. Obviously, granted, that was Patrick Mahomes and Kansas City's very, very explosive as far as their weapons are concerned offensively. But, again, San Francisco is facing a team this week. Phillip Rivers, he has a couple weapons as well with Mr. Gordon, Mr. Allen, Mr. Williams. They're not no pushovers here as far as offensively. So you get this guy going, things can get pretty ugly pretty fast. So that's what I am projecting here. Again, granted, this is a 10-point. They're 10-point favorites. Definitely keep in mind, the only thing I'm really concerned about it is the blowout potential here. If this game gets out of hand, you know, obviously we're not going to see a whole lot of fantasy points coming out of Phillip Rivers. But the hope is that the game stays fairly close, at least within the 10 points, and it gives Phillip Rivers an opportunity to keep airing the ball out. In the red zone, San Francisco, their opponents are averaging 14 attempts in the red zone, and they're giving up 2.5, 2 touchdowns and a field goal on average, 66% completion conversion ratio. And then when we look at Phillip Rivers, as we already know, you know, he is averaging, they're getting in the red zone 3 times and scoring 2 times every time they get in there, 70% conversion rate there. So their numbers look pretty good that they are able to get in the red zone and score on this team. This team has also been giving up to quarterbacks 25.8 DK points and 23.5 FanDuel points. And then we got a quarterback here that's already averaging 23 and 24 respectively in the 2 platforms. So definitely looks pretty good for Phillip Rivers to get at least 20 or more in this matchup. And he has 30-point upside. He was able to do that several times last year. As you can see, he was pretty close here in Game 1 against Kansas City against a defense that was not that good as far as defending the pass. So Phillip Rivers is someone to consider here. I definitely like him. He's the second guy that I like this week. Another guy that I like is Mr. Andy Dalton. I like Andy Dalton in the matchup here, 7,400. He's 5,400 on DK. That number is really nice on DK, 5,400 for Andy Dalton right here. He's averaging 20.7 and 21.7 fantasy points in the respective platforms between DK and FanDuel. Last week he put up 29 of 46, 352 yards. He had a 350-plus game last week. The only downfall is that he did give up 4 interceptions in that game. 2 touchdowns. He threw for 2 touchdowns. He had 18.08 FanDuel points and 21.1 DK points. What I also did is I digged up a little bit more on Mr. Dalton. He did have 17 plus and 9 out of his 16 games last year, so he's capable of getting you at least close to value on this price, and he's capable of getting you 20 or better. He did that 3 times last season in the 16-game season for Cincinnati. Inside the 20, he's been pretty good there as well. 11 of 16, 62 yards, 68.7% completion percentage, and he's thrown 5 touchdowns, 0 interceptions. Inside of 10, 6 of 8, even better, more efficient, 75% completion percentage, 27 yards for 4 touchdowns. So 4 out of his 5 touchdowns have come within the 10-yard line, and again, 0 interceptions. So he's doing very, very well there. They're going up against Atlanta, who's 26 in pass defense this year thus far, 70% quarterback completion percentage conversion has gone on right now. The opponents are throwing the ball and are being very efficient with their passes against Atlanta. And again, Atlanta just lost another safety. Now they're down with no Allen, no strong safety, Mr. Neal. They find themselves really in dire straits in their secondary, and this is, I think, an opportunity for Andy Dalton with Mr. Boyd, and maybe if A.J. Green is back, to be able to do a lot of damage here. And then don't forget, you got Giovanni Bernard in the backfield. This is one game that I kind of like also as a game stack, which I will discuss game stacks later in the week. But again, DK, so again, in the red zone, Atlanta, their opponents are getting in there 3.5 times per game and scoring at a 81.8% clip. They have been scoring 3 touchdowns and 3.5 opportunities there. So I mean, they really are struggling in defending in the red zone. And then you're going up against Andy Dalton, who's been really, really good in the red zone. So it's a little bit of a recipe for disaster here. We're looking at an 81.8% conversion ratio for opponents, and then we're looking at a red zone efficiency of Mr. Andy Dalton of 87.5%, where he's been getting down there nearly 2.5 times per game and scoring 2 touchdowns. So I can see him putting up 2 touchdowns, possibly even 3. I think this game is going to be a nice game, not only to watch, it's going to be a competitive game, and it's a perfect game also, like I mentioned, to possibly game stack. So I mean, I like those numbers. I think Andy Dalton is in a good spot here as well. I'm going to, you know, I normally only give you 3 quarterbacks. I definitely like another quarterback this week. And I'm going to speak about Mr. Eli Manning here of the New York Football Giants. 7,100 on FanDuel. And where's Mr. Eli? Eli Manning. It's 5,600 on DK. Now, he had a fantastic game last week. He's only averaging 13.8 fantasy points, as you can see here. But this past week, 25 of 29. 297 yards, 2 touchdowns. 19 on nearly a 20 spot. Okay, as far as fantasy points here on FanDuel. And on DK, he was at 19. He had the same number, 1978. As we know, he's not going to run for a whole lot. He's not going to do much of anything else. You give him protection, and he has a few weapons now. He obviously has OBJ. He has also Mr. Shepard. And he did lose out on Mr. Ingram, but he also has Mr. Barkley. So he has a couple weapons there that he can throw to and make things happen, but he needs the time. Last week he got the time. He was very efficient. His completion ratio was high, and he was able to hit those targets. In the red zone, Eli, 6 of 10 thus far this year, 44 yards, 3 touchdowns. Inside the 10, 2 of 2, 5 yards, 1 touchdown. He's completion percentage at about 67%. And going up against New Orleans pass defense is 30th in the league, so they're near the bottom, pretty much almost last. Opponents are the opposition quarterbacks are completing 74% of their passes on this team this year. 337 yards per game they've been coughing up, and they're tied with the Pittsburgh Steelers for the most touchdowns this year given up to quarterbacks at 10 touchdowns. Okay, that's very, very important. DK points, 34.6 DK points. Most in the NFL, New Orleans against quarterbacks, and 32.6 FanDuel points. So, I mean, someone to consider there, a little possible sneaky play. Keep your eye on Eli Manning. I think he's a definite option here, especially that he has some weapons in Shepard, OBJ, and obviously Mr. Barkley. I think this is a good matchup for him. So I really am considering Eli Manning. All right, guys? And that's pretty much it, man. That is pretty much it as far as my quarterbacks for this week. Stay tuned for the running backs videos coming up very soon. Then, of course, in the next day or so, you will also get the wide receivers and the tight end and defenses for the week. So just keep that in mind. On Thursday, I will probably more than likely have my first Thursday night look as far as making decisions there. I will probably put a lineup together like I normally did with the WNBA and NBA. I'll probably do something like that with the MVP, Pro, and Star spot here on FanDuel, and be able to give you a couple of ideas on which way to go with the captain mode on DraftKings, which I'm still getting familiarized with, as obviously we know that's a new feature there. So, and that's basically it, guys, man. So drop a like on the video, man. If you want to keep getting this content, definitely subscribe down below. You're going to get 4 or 5 videos a week. You're going to get also the live show on Saturday nights at 7 p.m. And yeah, that's basically it, man. So, you know, just make sure you do subscribe down below. Make sure you share the videos if you know other people. Let them know about DFS Zone. And at the same time, make sure you don't forget to drop a like and put on those post notifications. All right, guys? So that's basically it. See you in the next video. Running backs will be up shortly. All right, everybody have a great day.